Some possibilities for where the young adults in your community can be known for. One would be the environment. For many in this generation, there is a spiritual awareness that we have to care for the environment. Within the United States, there are about 2.5 million plastic bottles thrown away every hour in the United States. There are 100 billion plastic bags that are thrown away in the U.S. each year. What if a young adult community, like one we know in Atlanta, is the one who is known for introducing the recycling programs within a church? What if the young community is the one who is going out into the neighborhoods and introducing people to the idea of recycling and tangibly and intentionally thinking about how they interact with goods? A second option, caring for single moms. What if the young adult community is the one who is reaching out to the single moms and providing babysitting care or helping them get through economically tough times? And a third option, caring for teachers. It's interesting because the National Education Association estimates that the average teacher in the United States spends $475 out of their own pockets on school supplies each year. And some statistics peg it as high as $1,500 per year. We have a church in Denver that we know of that they became aware. It was a young adult community that became aware of this incredible need. And so what they did is they did a drive for gift cards. And they went out and they got people to donate gift cards. And then they went into the local schools and they said, you know, we just want to support what you're doing. We know that you love to teach. We know that you love these kids. Here's a $50 gift card to Target so you can go out and buy the supplies that you need. And what an incredible message that is sending to the local community. But once again, it's the young adults who are on the forefront of reaching out. So make sure that your young adult community has the opportunity to be known for something extraordinary. The third thing that I discovered in my research on this generation, which I think was pretty significant, is that this generation is on the move. In case many of you haven't noticed, I believe this is a generation that is largely born with roller skates. They are go, 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 and they don't seem to stop. 45% of Americans aged 24 to 35 expect to move within the next 2 years. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median stay at jobs by workers in their 20s has been halved from 2.2 years in 1983 to 1.1 years today. We were watching C-SPAN, yes, I am that much of a nerd, earlier this week. And the CEO of McDonald's was on, and he said that by the age of 40, it's estimated that the average American will have 10 different jobs. And so people are constantly on the move, both professionally and geographically. In this generation, that means that some of the young adults will be moving out of mom and dad's house eventually, and maybe across town or to a different city or to a different state. But with all of those moves, I think it means something very significant for those of us who are committed to reaching this generation. And that is that with such a highly mobile generation, we have to do two things. The first of which is keep our hearts tender. For a number of years, I lived in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, which is a ski town. And for any of you who have ever lived in tourist towns with kind of a seasonal business, you know that there's a time of year when everybody rolls into town, and then there is another time of year when they all leave. And I remember living in Steamboat in the fall, all these incredible people would come to town. We get to know them, and we go skiing and snowboarding with them, and we totally hang out, and we talk about Jesus and faith and God and life and just live life together. And whether you meant to or not, you'd find yourself just connecting with these young group of people, and it'd be amazing. Except the problem is that eventually spring would come, and they would pack up, and they would head out. And some of them were heading to amazing things. Maybe they were going to seminary, or maybe they were going back to finish their degree, or maybe they were going to take care of their parents, or maybe they were going out to do some sort of missions work or ministry. And while my heart fully supported them, there was also a part of my heart that was a little bit hurt. Because you see, when you come and you love people like Jesus calls you to love them, you can't help but have your hearts just kind of grow together. And when someone packs up to leave and they go, it's almost like your heart is a little bit raw. And what I found is winter after living in Colorado, that more and more the new people would come, and I'd kind of take a step back because I didn't want to get as involved. Because if you're not careful, your heart can get raw and eventually scabbed over. And I wish that there was some magical cure for this kind of thing, but all I know is just to take my heart back to Christ time and time again and say, God, help me to love these people as you love them. Whether it is but for a winter or a short season or for 4 years of college or for whatever that may be, help me to love them and keep my heart tender. The second thing that I think it means that with this generation being highly on the move is that it is essential. It is absolutely essential that we take a team approach to leadership, particularly with working with young adults. In other words, you cannot just have one young adult over music and one young adult over food and one young adult over cleanup or whatever it may be, but rather we need to build teams. Because if you can get a team of young adults over a certain thing, then all of a sudden you're not the one who's having to micromanage them and having to come back and say, well, did you do this? Did you? And ask all those accountability questions. All of a sudden when you develop a team approach, then they hold each other accountable. And Susan's asking David, hey, are you going to be there? I know you've been running late lately. Is there any way you could get there on time? And all of a sudden, you see people start connecting and holding each other accountable and growing together. Well, something else interesting happens when that kind of thing begins. And that is these young communities and these little teeny pods of people who are put together, they start to come into a tighter relationship with each other and with God. And what I have seen is that as young adults connect with each other, that often these connections can be so strong that they don't want to leave. In other words, I know young adults who have had incredible job offers in distant towns and in cities, and yet they turn it down because they know the value of the Christian community that they have, and they know that there are some things that money just can't buy. So go ahead and keep your heart tender, and secondly, take a team approach to training leadership. The fourth thing that I think is essential to know and to be aware of regarding this generation is that this generation is being shaped by technology in more ways than you can possibly imagine. 60% of teenagers today own a cell phone. I recently heard a statistic that there are more text messages sent each day now than there are people on the planet. And odds are some of the teenagers you know are accounting for more than their fair proportion of those. At the same time, of those between the ages of 22 and 26, about 30% are publishing blogs, also known as weblogs or online diaries, where they're talking about what they are doing in their life. Right now, if you look at the total number of people on Facebook and you add them all up, they will account for what would be equivalent to the 5th largest nation in the world. And Facebook continues to grow in leaps and bounds. What does this mean to you as a mission try to reach this generation? I think it's important to recognize that for some of us, we feel like technological immigrants. We feel like we're moving into a land where technology is shifting so fast that it's hard to keep up. Whereas those who have been born in this technological culture, for them, they are just technological natives. This is the world that they grew up in. There are 5-year-olds today who are designing their own web pages, and they scare me. Are we tracking? And so to recognize that we can have a friend or foe approach to technology. We can approach it as a foe and say, you know what, I can't go there, I can't do that. Or we can harness it in order to build relationships and advance the kingdom of God. And I am pushing for the latter. Because you see, I believe that whether it's programming your DVD or VCR, whether it's figuring out why your TV is not going to work in the next few weeks, whether it's figuring out your cell phone or your new iPod, that is an opportunity to build a relationship with a young adult and say, could you help me? Will you enter my world and help me comprehend and learn how to use these things? I think secondly, as a church as a whole, that we have got to realize that technology can build incredible opportunities for reaching people with the gospel. MySpace, for some of you who are on it, and it can be a little bit sketchy. There are some crazy people who come out to play on MySpace. And yet what we've seen is that when we go out into MySpace, that we can build incredible relationships as well. There is a church in the Midwest who was a little bit hesitant about having a MySpace page because it raises all kinds of questions about how do you regulate that? How do you assure who's your friend and what they say, and when the inappropriate things pop up, how do you monitor that? And they said, you know what? We're just going to have somebody who's going to keep an eye on it, and we're going to do this anyway. Well, they put up their MySpace page, and there was a girl online, just a young girl, and she goes, a church with a MySpace page? I didn't know that there was a church in my area that was this cool. So she decides to go to church. She goes to church, she comes into a relationship with Jesus Christ, and now she is actively serving in that church, all because the church chose to have a MySpace page. Another example of this is pastors and leaders who are harnessing MySpace and Facebook to find out what's really going on in their congregation.